But if you had told me 30 years ago Bill Cosby would be in jail, even I would have took that bet.
For decades, Bill Cosby played the part of America's dad. But behind the warm sweaters and funny faces, he kept a list. Not a list of friends, but a list of enemies. These were the actors who defied him, who challenged him, and who he tried to silence. Now, the full story of the Hollywood stars Bill Cosby hated the most is finally being told. What did they know, and why did he want them gone? Eddie Murphy. In the early 1980s, a new star was rising in the world of comedy. His name was Eddie Murphy. At just 19 years old, he joined the cast of Saturday Night Live and almost single-handedly saved the show from being canceled. He was electric, a force of nature who could make audiences cry with laughter. Growing up in Roosevelt, New York, Murphy had been inspired by the comedy greats. He listened to Richard Pryor's albums and watched comedians like Bill Cosby, dreaming of one day being on stage himself. By the time he was 15, he was already performing his own routines at local clubs, honing the skills that would soon make him a global superstar. His rise was incredibly fast. After SNL, Hollywood came calling. He starred in the hit movie 48 Hours with Nick Nolte, and then in Trading Places with fellow SNL star Dan Aykroyd. These movies were massive successes, and by 1984, his film Beverly Hills Cop became the highest-grossing movie of the year. Eddie Murphy was no longer just a rising star. He was the new king of comedy. He was young, rich, and doing comedy his way, with a raw energy and a lot of curse words that audiences loved. But not everyone was a fan of his style. One person in particular was watching his rise with a growing sense of unease. That person was Bill Cosby. At the time, Cosby was seen as the most powerful black entertainer in the world. His comedy was clean, family-friendly, and he had built an empire on being America's dad. He believed he was the gatekeeper, the one who set the rules for how black performers should act. And Eddie Murphy was breaking all of his rules. The tension between the old king and the new one came to a head in a single phone call. As Murphy described years later in his 1987 stand-up special Raw, he had been a big fan of Bill Cosby his whole life, but had never met him. Then one day, the phone rang. It was Bill Cosby. Cosby did not call to congratulate the young comedian on his success. He called to scold him. He chastised Murphy for being too dirty on stage, for using too much profanity in his act. Murphy was stunned. This man he had looked up to was calling him out of the blue to tell him how he should perform comedy. Years later, Murphy reflected on that moment and realized what was really going on. He said it was not just about the language he used. It was about power. In those days, Murphy explained, it felt like Hollywood only had room for one black superstar at a time. When he came on the scene, he was a new force, and Cosby saw him as a threat. Richard Pryor, another comedy legend, was not threatened by Murphy. He saw Murphy as a reflection of himself. But Bill Cosby was different. He saw Murphy's style of comedy and worried that this was the new way things were going to be. He saw a new guy who could knock him out of his top spot. Instead of backing down, Eddie Murphy did something incredibly bold. He took that private phone call and made it a centerpiece of his next comedy special. In front of a massive crowd at Madison Square Garden, he told the entire story of how Bill Cosby called him up to criticize his act. He turned Cosby's attempt to control him into a punchline, mocking the older comedian's clean image. The crowd roared with laughter. With that one routine, Murphy publicly declared that he would not be controlled by Bill Cosby. He was signaling a major shift in comedy, a move away from the safe, respectable style of Cosby and towards a more honest, unfiltered form of expression. The feud between them simmered for decades. In 2015, when Saturday Night Live was celebrating its 40th anniversary, the producers wanted Murphy to do a sketch where he played Bill Cosby. By this time, dozens of women had come forward accusing Cosby of terrible crimes. But Murphy refused. He said he would not kick a man when he was down. He explained that there was nothing funny about the situation and that making jokes would only hurt Cosby's accusers and Cosby himself. He did not want to turn his return to the show into a moment about that. But 4 years later, in 2019, things had changed. Bill Cosby was in prison, found guilty of aggravated indecent assault. Eddie Murphy returned to host SNL for the first time in 35 years. He stood on the stage where he first became a star and talked about how his life had changed. He was a father of 10 now, a stay-at-home dad. Then he delivered the final blow in their long-running feud. He said if you had told him 30 years ago that he would be a boring house dad and Bill Cosby would be in jail, he would have taken that bet. Then he launched into a perfect impression of Cosby's famous voice and asked the world, "Who is America's dad now?" The response from Cosby's camp was swift and furious. His spokesperson released a statement calling Murphy's joke sad and disparaging. The statement went on to call Eddie Murphy a Hollywood slave and accused him of selling himself out to bring down another black man. It was a bitter and angry response, proving that even from behind bars, Cosby's hatred for the man who had defied him was as strong as ever. The battle for the soul of comedy had been won long ago, but the war between the two men was clearly not over. But if Cosby's fight with Eddie Murphy was about losing his crown, his next battles were about losing control of an entire culture. Chris Rock and Martin Lawrence. Eddie Murphy's rebellion did not just change his own career. It opened the door for a whole new generation of comedians who were not afraid to be loud, edgy, and real. One of the first to walk through that door was a young comic from Brooklyn named Chris Rock. Rock got his start in comedy clubs in New York, and it was Eddie Murphy who discovered him, becoming his friend and mentor and giving him his first movie role in Beverly Hills Cop 2. Following in his mentor's footsteps, Chris Rock developed a style of comedy that was smart, sharp, and often controversial. He talked about race and politics in a way that made people laugh but also made them think. And just like Murphy, he quickly found himself on Bill Cosby's bad side. In an interview years later, Rock admitted that when he was first starting out, Bill Cosby was disdainful to him. It was a quiet confirmation of what many suspected. Cosby did not just have a problem with Eddie Murphy. He had a problem with anyone who did not follow his rules of what comedy should be. Rock said that Cosby eventually came around, but that early chilliness showed a clear pattern. Cosby saw the new generation as a threat and treated them with contempt. While Cosby's disapproval of Chris Rock was mostly behind the scenes, his attack on another rising star was very public. Martin Lawrence was another comedian who came up in the late 80s and early 90s. He was a ball of energy, known for his physical comedy and his raw, in-your-face humor. In 1992, he got his own sitcom called Martin, which quickly became a massive hit for the Fox network. The show was the complete opposite of The Cosby Show. Where the Huxtables were calm, sophisticated, and respectable, Martin's world was loud, chaotic, and full of wild characters, many of whom were played by Lawrence himself in prosthetics and drag. The humor was often over the top, and to some, vulgar. To Bill Cosby, it was an outrage. In an interview with Newsweek magazine, Cosby took a direct shot at Martin and other similar shows. He publicly complained about their vulgarity, asking, "How many times has the punchline been about genitalia or big breasts?" This was not just a comedian offering a critique. This was the most powerful black man in entertainment condemning a younger performer's work in a national magazine. Cosby believed that black entertainers had a special responsibility. He felt they needed to present a deliberate show of dignity to earn respect from the wider world. In his eyes, The Cosby Show was the perfect example of this. It showed a successful, dignified black family that everyone could admire. Martin Lawrence, on the other hand, insisted that black people did not have to put on an act anymore, not even an act of dignity. His show was about being free, being funny, and being real, even if that reality was sometimes messy and loud. This was a fundamental clash of ideas. Cosby came from a generation that had to fight for its place at the table, and he believed that place was best secured through quiet respectability. Lawrence and Rock were part of the hip-hop generation, a culture that valued authenticity and keeping it real above all else. Cosby's public attacks were a clear sign that he was losing his grip on black culture. The world was changing, and the comedy that he championed was being replaced by something new, something that he did not understand and could not control. His attempts to shame these younger comedians into silence did not work. Instead, they became even more popular, proving that audiences were hungry for their fresh, unapologetic voices. Cosby's hatred for this new generation was not just about comedy. It was a reaction to his own fading influence. He was becoming a relic, and he hated the very people who were making him one. His need for control, however, was not limited to his professional rivals. It soon became clear that he demanded the same level of obedience from the people closest to him, including his own on-screen family. And when one of them dared to defy him, the consequences were severe. Lisa Bonet. On The Cosby Show, Lisa Bonet played Denise Huxtable, the cool, free-spirited second daughter who became a fan favorite and a 1980s-style icon. But in real life, Bonet's independent spirit put her on a direct collision course with the show's patriarch, Bill Cosby. From the beginning, there were signs of tension. Bonet was often late to the set, a habit that reportedly frustrated the disciplined Cosby. She was a young star growing up in the public eye, and she was determined to live life on her own terms, not the terms set by her TV dad. The conflict escalated when Bonet began to pursue projects outside of the show's wholesome image. She posed for a topless photo shoot in Interview magazine, and then she accepted a role in the dark, R-rated film Angel Heart. In the movie, she performed a nude sex scene with actor Mickey Rourke. Cosby was famously against her taking the part. He had carefully crafted the image of the perfect American family, and one of his TV daughters appearing in such a controversial film threatened that image. He saw himself not just as her boss, but as a father figure, and he tried to control her career and her choices. To keep her in the fold, Cosby created a spin-off show just for her, A Different World. The show would follow Denise Huxtable as she went off to Hillman, a fictional historically black college. It seemed like a perfect solution, a way to let Bonet spread her wings while still keeping her under the Cosby umbrella. But the peace did not last long. After the first season, Bonet announced that she was pregnant with her then-husband, musician Lenny Kravitz. The show's new director, Debbie Allen, saw this as a great opportunity. She wanted to write the pregnancy into the show, believing it would be a powerful and realistic storyline for a young college student. But Bill Cosby refused. He personally vetoed the idea. In his mind, Denise Huxtable, a member of the perfect Huxtable family, could not be a pregnant, unwed mother in college. It did not fit the pristine image he had created. So instead of embracing a real-life story, Cosby had her written off the show. Denise dropped out of Hillman and was sent off to Africa on The Cosby Show, effectively firing Lisa Bonet from her own series. It was a stunning display of power, a clear message that anyone who stepped out of line, even his own TV daughter, would be punished. The tension on set was felt by others as well. Joseph C. Phillips, the actor who played Denise's husband, Lieutenant Martin Kendall, on The Cosby Show, was a huge admirer of Bill Cosby. He wrote that he felt adulation and devotedness toward the man he considered a mentor. But as the years went by and accusations against Cosby began to surface, Phillips grew disturbed. His view completely changed after he spoke to a female friend who Cosby had also mentored. When he asked her about the star, she became tearful and cursed Cosby for violating her trust and her body. Phillips was filled with anger, both at Cosby for his actions and at himself for putting the man on a pedestal. He eventually wrote an essay titled, "Of Course Bill Cosby is Guilty." Years later, after the world had learned of the dozens of accusations against Cosby, Lisa Bonet finally broke her silence. She said that the shocking revelations did not change her memories of the show because it was exactly as she remembered it. She explained that while she had no specific knowledge of his crimes, she always felt a dark energy around him. She described it as a sinister shadow energy that could not be concealed. When an interviewer asked if she had sensed a darkness in him, her response was simple and chilling. Always. She did not need to know the details. She could feel the truth. Her defiance was not just about movie roles or being on time. It was a rejection of the darkness she felt hiding behind the mask of America's dad. That same darkness was fueled by a powerful sense of hypocrisy. For years, Cosby appointed himself the moral judge of others, all while hiding his own terrible secrets. But it was that very public moralizing that would ultimately lead to his ruin. Hannibal Buress. By the early 2000s, Bill Cosby had transformed from a beloved comedian into a public moralist. He began traveling the country, giving speeches where he scolded the black community for its problems. The most famous of these was a 2004 speech at an NAACP event that became known as the Pound Cake Speech. In it, Cosby went on a rant, blaming poor black people for their own struggles. He criticized their parenting, the names they gave their children like Shaniqua and Muhammad, and the way they dressed, with their pants hanging down. He spoke about people getting shot over a piece of pound cake and then blamed the victim, asking, what the hell was he doing with the pound cake in his hand? He told the audience that they should stop blaming racism and instead look at their own culture. It was a harsh, finger-wagging speech that positioned Cosby as an untouchable elder statesman, a man so righteous he had the right to judge everyone else. For years, this public image as a moral crusader worked. It made him seem like a figure of unimpeachable character, which helped to shield him from the dark rumors that had been swirling for years. But that all changed on a single night in October 2014. A comedian named Hannibal Buress was performing a stand-up set in Philadelphia, Bill Cosby's hometown. For months, Buress had been doing a bit about Cosby, but it never got much of a reaction. On this night, however, someone in the audience was recording. Buress started talking about how much he hated Cosby's smug public persona. He mimicked Cosby's scolding tone, saying, "Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom." Then Buress delivered the line that would ignite a firestorm. He said, "Yeah, but you women, Bill Cosby, so turn the crazy down a couple notches." He had weaponized Cosby's own preachy attitude against him, perfectly capturing the hypocrisy that so many people were starting to feel. The audience was a mix of shocked gasps and nervous laughter. Buress then told everyone in the room to go home and Google Bill Cosby. He joked that the search would get a lot more results than a search for his own name. And people did. The clip of Buress's set was posted online and went viral almost instantly. A story that had been an open secret in Hollywood for decades, a story that reporters had tried to publish in the 1980s and 1990s, suddenly exploded into the public consciousness. The dam had broken. In the weeks that followed, dozens of women felt empowered to come forward and tell their stories. Model Janice Dickinson, supermodel Beverly Johnson, and more than 60 other women shared their own harrowing accounts of being drugged and assaulted by Bill Cosby. The avalanche of accusations was unstoppable. TV networks pulled reruns of The Cosby Show, and projects were canceled. The man who had built his career on being a moral authority was now exposed as a predator. And in the ultimate twist of irony, his own words came back to seal his fate. In 2015, a federal judge had to decide whether to unseal a secret deposition Cosby had given in a 2005 lawsuit. In his ruling, the judge specifically mentioned Cosby's role as a public moralist, citing the pound cake speech as a reason why Cosby had a reduced right to privacy. The judge unsealed the documents. In that deposition, the world learned that Bill Cosby had admitted under oath to giving women quaaludes because he wanted to have sex with them. The very speeches where he judged others were used as the legal justification to reveal his own dark secrets to the world. Hannibal Buress may have lit the match, but Bill Cosby had spent years building his own funeral pyre. From Eddie Murphy's rebellion to Lisa Bonet's defiance, Bill Cosby's career was defined by his hate for anyone who would not submit to his control. He appointed himself a judge of others, all while hiding his own monstrous secrets. In the end, the legacy he fought so hard to protect was shattered, not by the enemies he made, but by the man he truly was.